Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Today's webinar is on how to move your break-fix clients into the managed services, recurring revenue model style services, right, that everybody is looking after. My name is Aris Demosthenous. I'm the training content manager here at SolarWinds in the MSP division. I've been with the company for about 15 years, started back when it was another company called Enable Technology. And been in the space since 2004. We've worked in a sales capacity, not just selling to MSPs, but also helping MSPs sell to their customers. So sort of a channel role where I'd go into market and do some windshield time with you guys and help you guys sell to your customers once upon a time when it was necessary. In that time, I've also done about 8.5 years worth of consulting work in the MSP space. I've worked with over probably 1,500, closer to 2,000 MSP business owners one-on-one, helping them build their go-to-market strategies, program structures, pricing structures, and so on. And today, my job is to, well, basically help the community at large. So I've helped stand up the MSP Institute, which houses a lot of our training. A lot of the slides that you'll see today are in training that's in the Institute already. But basically, it's there to help our customers become even better, right? To take that next step in their evolution on the managed services road to success. And we have invest very heavily in that. Our mantra is very simple. As a channel company, we grow on the backs of our customer success, and so we invest in it quite heavily, and we expect that you do the same. So today, we want to talk about how to move those customers from break-fix into managed. It seems to be a bit of a hurdle for a lot of people. There's reasons for that, obviously, and we'll talk about those as we go. But before we get into it too deeply, I'd like to start by taking a step back and realizing what those programs actually look like. And so, I mean, this is a 10,000-foot view, obviously. We can get way more granular than this, but we're looking at basically the evolution of the managed services portfolio, right? Starting with reactive, which is what we call break-fix, obviously. This is what most MSPs started their careers doing and still do to this day. It'll probably never disappear 100%. But generally speaking, what we're talking about when we're looking at the reactive program is supporting the existing infrastructure that a customer has in a break-fix model, where they call us when there's a problem, and either we remote in or drive on site depending on what the issue is, and then charge them for our time and our materials. The next level up is an a la carte program. This program is designed specifically to sell one thing and fix one problem for the customer in a recurring revenue model. So maybe you continually complain about virus outbreaks, and so we'll sell you a managed antivirus package where we'll supply you with an enterprise class AV solution, monitor it, manage it, make sure it's doing the things it's supposed to be doing for you in all cases. And that way we would reduce the likelihood and frequency of those types of issues happening in the future for a very small monthly fee. And then the proactive program is really the first true managed services model, the way we think about it in the space anyways, where we're taking a holistic approach to the customer's network, monitoring and managing it. We have a statement of work that we're promising to deliver every month, and anything that falls outside of that scope of work becomes billable. And then the fully managed program, really the holy grail of managed services, throughout history here, which is the fixed fee, all-you-can-eat buffet. Well, I will maintain your network status quo as is for a fixed monthly price, regardless of how many times you have issues or I have to do something about it. Okay, with a few exceptions, obviously, like acts of God and project work like hardware replacements and software upgrades and things like that. Like if not patches, when I say software upgrades, I mean you want a new version of your accounting software uploaded in your network, that kind of bit. And then now you're starting to see that threat monitoring piece, right, where security has really become the main focus of our space in the last couple of years and likely ongoing. And so this is an emerging program for all intents and purposes, where we're leveraging SOC style services like SIM management, threat hunting and detection. We're using likely an MSSP to deliver those services on the back end. Some MSPs are trying to become MSSPs and add that extra S as well. And that all that jockeying is still sort of being sorted out today. But the general consensus is let's get somebody who knows what they're doing in the threat monitoring side for us, and and will resell their services and make a margin staying between them and the customer, that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's sort of the overall look at it. Now, what I want to do before getting into how we move people is talk about the customer characteristics at each level real quickly, right? So when we're looking at the reactive customers, we're typically looking at smaller shops. Now, that's an indicator, not a rule. Okay, at the end of the day, a reactive customer is more of a mentality than it is any demographic per se, right? This is basically a person who doesn't perceive themselves spending very much on IT on an annual basis. They don't believe that their network is that mission critical to their day-to-day activity, so they don't feel that they're that reliant on it. And as such, they have a low perceived sensitivity to downtime. Like when it breaks, it's not a big deal for them. They want to pay for help when they think they need it, right? They're extremely cost conscious. These are the things that make a reactive customer who they are, right? They're not really. Now, they may be wrong. They may really be reliant on IT, in which case, that'll lend itself very well to what we're going to talk about later. But if they really are not dependent on their network, if they're, I don't know, I can't even think of a business that doesn't rely on IT these days, but maybe like a plumber or something back in the day where they didn't really have tablets in the trucks and and so on and so forth. So the phone rang and they were reactive, just like we are as well, or were, and they pick up the phone, hear something, go solve the problem, charge the customer for time and materials. Those types of businesses would not lend themselves very well to any of the higher level services. But in today's market, pretty much all SMBs are leaning on IT for some reason or another, and that's what makes them a good fit for managed services, right? So moving over into the a la carte side of the fence, right? So moving up into the right here, we're talking about a guy, still the same kind of company, that they believe that their network isn't really that mission critical yet. They're kind of reliant on it, but they're really not tied to it deeply. They think if it went down, they could still work until it does, and then they cry wolf. We all know those people sound like, right? And they're starting to get frustrated with the cost of repair and downtime, though. They're starting to realize that, okay, when I have an incident and I pick up the phone and call a service provider, there's a 4-hour response window, that I have to wait for somebody to get out here. And then there's the time for them to solve the problem, identify the problem and solve the problem. And that could be a half a day or a day long, right? Just to get one problem solved. And so they're starting to realize that hurts, right? And so as soon as they start realizing that hurts a little bit, now they're starting to be in a position in their minds where they're not, maybe they're not really ready to pay the premium for preventative maintenance, like a proactive program that takes on their whole environment, but they are really ready to take on one piece, right? Like the antivirus example I gave you before. Or maybe they don't know when their backups are being done correctly and they're scared of losing their data and they're willing to pay to keep that going. But they're willing to invest in one piece of IT on a monthly basis is really what characterizes an a la carte customer. And then what we do as MSPs is find the next piece and the next piece and the next piece and grow them up into that proactive model, because they've reached a spot where, hey, you know what, I'm spending enough now, it makes sense, right? So that's kind of one of the strategies that we'll talk about. Then, the proactive offering is really the first one, like we talked about. Now, these guys, the first managed services offering truly that we talked about in the first slide there, these guys really started to understand that the cost of downtime when there is a remediation bill is actually more than the bill itself, right? They've realized that when you come out and spend 3 hours and charge $100 an hour, $125 an hour, and you leave that $300 to $375 bill behind, that bill is actually not the total cost of their outage, right? They started to recognize that their employees are costing them money, their utilities are still being paid for, they've lost other opportunity costs and so on. And these guys are starting to understand that the remediation bill is just one sliver of the pie in terms of their IT expenses when an issue occurs. And so they're more willing to look at preventing that issue, right? They want a better way to manage their IT than the traditional model that exists, right? They want to know what they don't know about their network as well from an informational perspective. These guys have that light bulb switched on. And then the fully managed customers are those guys. They're an extension of those guys. They've gotten to the point where, you know what, I need to flatline my IT expense. I want to know exactly how much I'm going to spend on IT every month. That's what characterizes that fully managed guy. These are the people who want, you know, CIO level visibility into their networks. They might even have a budget that they're thinking of for IT, whether it's right or wrong. At least they've started thinking about putting money towards it and having a consistent amount of money towards it on a monthly basis. Okay, so that's sort of the full range. I mean, we can get into I left out the threat monitoring customers characteristics. We can leave that to another day, but this is really, you know, the main part of today's conversation is moving people from that break fix model on the far left into one of these three: a la carte, proactive, and managed is where we really want to move people, right? So there's really two distinct buying groups when you get into sales, right? There's the value sensitive guys and the, you know, cost sensitive ones, right? And that sort of creates a divide in terms of which of those two models you can sell them. So if you've got a reactive customer, either a prospect that you've just, you know, spoken with the first time who's always done things reactively, or an existing customer of your own who's still in that model as a reactive customer, then, you know, we have to sort of segregate which of these two people they are. Are they more of a price sensitive person, or are they a value sensitive person? Because if they're, you know, if they're a value sensitive person, if they're motivated by value, they're likely understand their network to be mission critical, and they're likely to buy a proactive or managed program, assuming, of course, we position it correctly for them. And if they're price sensitive, then they're motivated by need rather than value, and then they're likely either going to stay in the break fix model, or at best case, you're going to sell them an a la carte model. Now, success in sales for managed services means aligning the right solution for the right customer, and so we need to identify who they are and be honest with ourselves when we talk about them. I know, and I say that last bit because I know of a lot of MSPs who, you know, they want to sell nothing but proactive and managed, and that's great. I know a lot of MSPs who've gotten to the point where they do nothing but managed for all intents and purposes. But what that really means is that they've segregated out a lot of the market. Okay, because in today's market in North America, we still see a 75-25% split in the SMB space as to those buying a la carte and down, or those buying proactive and up. Okay, and so if you get to a point where, you know, you're fully managed, all you've said is that all of my customers are in that 5% range of the market. That's who I'm going after. Though that's my niche. The most successful MSPs in will get to that point, but more often than not, they did not give up on the rest of them to get there, right? Like, you have to have a mix of break fix, a la carte, proactive, and managed. Break fix is never going to go away, as far as I know, anyways. You know, when I look at things, networks are machines that break down, just like cars. We'll always need mechanics, and so we'll always need service providers as well. However, there's always a better way to manage things, and so our job as MSPs is to sell the customer or prospect on the appropriate fit for them and get some recurring revenue out of them at whatever level they're at. Okay, so typically this is sort of the stepping ladder you'll see. You'll start break fix. Now, some customers, because of the mentalities that we talked about before, those characteristics, can jump a la carte and go right to proactive. And there's nothing wrong with that, and we want to do that wherever possible. But however, that may not always be possible as well. And so, because of that fact, we have to have this middle ground here, this a la carte program. This is really an easy way to get in the door, get the customer to start paying for services on a monthly basis, right? This is a way for them to get used to paying a small amount for IT every month, and that's sort of the foot in the door I'm talking about, right? So if they do keep calling with antivirus or virus outbreak problems or something, and I go out there and solve that problem for them, and fix it and leave them with the bill, and then turn to them as an engineer or business owner or whomever it is that went out there and say, we probably could have prevented this for less than a cup of coffee every month. chances are they're willing to listen, right? Like, because a managed antivirus solution is going to be anywhere from $3 a month to, say, $8 a month, depending on the type of software you're using and the market you happen to be in. So, I mean, in most cases, it's $5 and under. So, when you're looking at that sort of price point, they're probably sitting there with a cup of Starbucks in their hand that cost them, the same or greater. So, turning to them and say, I can solve this problem for you by providing you with an enterprise class antivirus solution that I will monitor, that I will manage, that I will make sure is working at peak performance. No, I can't stop everything, even though I'm using a great piece of software and managing it to its fullest potential, because there's other ways that viruses can come in this network. And if we start seeing that that's happening, we can address those as well, Mr. Customer. But for now, this might be a really great spot to start. And so we'll sell them one a la carte line item. Now, if we're making $3 a month per desktop, or per user, however we're going to position it, and it's a 20-user organization, which is the average SMB, right? At the end of the day, we're not breaking the bank. We're not buying the Ferrari off of $60 a month, right? But like I said before, what we are doing is getting somebody who would never pay for IT at the beginning of every month to start paying for IT at the beginning of every month. And they see value in that one thing. And if we do a good job, which I know you all do, they're going to realize that that problem's diminishing and that money's worth it. And then when we turn around a month later or 2 months later and talk to them about their backups and start to, dig into whether they're getting successful backups or not, and they really have no idea, and we go check, and lo and behold, it's hit or miss or something, and we talk to them about it, we can easily sell them another a la carte line item for, a managed backup solution. And then we turn to them a couple of months later and we say, hey, guess what, guys? Mail is the #1 place where a breach occurs on the security side. Over 90% of breaches start with a phishing attack. And so why don't we get you into one of my managed email security programs as well for another $3 a user, and so on and so on. And we start growing the capital a little at a time, the revenue, a little at a time, until they get to this breaking point where they're spending, $400 or $500, maybe even $600 a month in this piecemeal way. And the proactive program to manage the entire network is a $650. And all of a sudden it becomes a no-brainer. Okay, so that's one way that we can grow them up the maturity model. The other way is to start from the top and fall back. Perhaps instead, I want to look at all of my customers and segment who they are and realize, based on the characteristics that we talked about before, that some of them are a good fit for a proactive service, and I'm going to start there. I'm going to aim at the proactive for those guys, and if I can't convince them, I will fall back to that a la carte line item, right? The truth of the matter is your MSP sales process should be the thing that dictates how and when you sort this out. And I'll show you what the most common one is in the space in 1 second. But before I do, I just want to check with Chelsea. Chelsea, are there any questions so far, or are you there?
So far, no questions, so
No
continue
question.
on.
Okay, my powers of description are so fantastic that you guys have nothing to say. Okay, please start asking questions. Okay, if like I said, my name is Aris Demosthenous. If you know anything about that, that means I'm Greek. So 11 people, 12 conversations at the dinner table. Feel free to shoot the questions at us. All right, guys. Now let's talk about the MSP sales process. So in general, this is what I see as the most successful sales process in the market. I made it a chalice from a visual perspective rather than a funnel. And the reason for that is quite simply, we saw that our customers weren't doing a good enough job on the growth side, at the bottom part of the chalice. And so I wanted to call it out, right? It's incredibly important in today's MSP landscape that you become a very profitable MSP with high revenues if you want to get sold for a good business valuation. And the bottom part of that funnel is really where we get to increase that profitability the most. It's a lot cheaper and more effective for us to grow our existing customers than it is to find new ones. That, coupled with the fact that most MSPs come from a technical background rather than a sales background, it's easier to talk to an existing customer whom already trusts you than it is to gain trust with a net new one. So I just wanted to make that sort of visibly clear. In our case, however, when we're talking about this specific topic of moving people from break fix to fully managed, we have to assume that they're already your customers in a break fix model. That's the assumption I'm going to make. And this model still exists and should still be something that you guys do, right? We want to start with lead gen, and I'll talk about, what we're talking about with lead gen when it comes to our specific topic today. But once we get that prospect in place, or once we've convinced our customer to talk to us about something else, in our case, the business analysis section, that first part of the sales cycle, that gray bit here, right in the, right after the lead gen piece, this is where, the sorting hat sort of comes into play. Pardon my Harry Potter, analogy there, but this is where we start to realize where they fit. We start to understand by asking questions about their business, which of the customer characteristics they fit the best that I outlined earlier, right? Which of these customers are they, so that I know what to do next, okay? And so this is really a learning phase for us, the business analysis. And so, your sale is made or broken at that phase of the cycle. Now, as it relates to what we're doing in terms of moving people from break fix to fully managed or proactive or managed services of any kind, the first thing I would suggest is segmenting your existing customer base. Now, we have a sample worksheet for you called the segmentation worksheet, or heat map, pardon me. And this is part one of it, basically, is you guys outlining what you know about your existing customers, right? So do they have staff? How many workstations, servers, network devices, mobile devices do they have? What type of industry or vertical are they in? Are they sensitive to downtime or security? These two columns especially will dictate which plan you might want to put in front of them. Do they have an existing engagement with us? Of course they do. Likely most of these are TNM or break fix or whatever you're going to put in there. Block is basically a break fix customer, obviously with prepaid hours, so we can do that. And then the goal becomes to move all these guys into either an a la carte or a proactive or up type of engagement. And this is how much they might be spending with us. There's a middle section with exactly their spend laid out. And then finally, a last section, which is the heat map, so to speak, which shows us, a couple of things. One, where should our next look be, right? And really the heat map itself, and again, this is a tool in the Institute for our customers, but you can do something very similar to this, and is basically there to show us, find the green box with the biggest number, that should be our next target for upgrade or cross-sell, right? And my logic is up here in the little comment boxes across the top, but whoever downloads this can change it. I've left it unlocked. The point here is to say, like in this case, this one here should be my next target. And so this is a customer who's already a proactive customer and buying managed backup and patch and antivirus and all the rest of that from me. And my logic for this one was, if he's spending 80% of what the fully managed bill would be, let's go talk to him about it. Right now, proactive would be another one. This guy is really just a break fix guy, or a block guy, but he's spending enough with me, right? He's again, 80% of what it would cost him to be in a proactive program is what he's spending now. Let's go talk to him. Or based on the fact that he has a high sensitivity to security and he doesn't own anything with me, like this guy again being a break fix shop, I could go to him and sell him a managed antivirus or a managed patch or a managed backup solution. This is obviously a bigger customer with the numbers that are in here, but if you look at this one down here, it's probably a little more realistic for the SMB space. This guy is, again, if I went back to here, a TNM customer, right? He's a small one with 7 workstations, 1 server, 1 network device. He's medium on the sensitivity to downtime and security. He's spending on about $125 an hour with me, and on average, it looks like about 2 hours a month. Well, you know what? If I look at his information, it might make a lot of sense to go and position some of these services for him. Okay, so looking at your existing customer and segmenting your customer base and using a tool like the customer growth heat map or something similar is a good way to start positioning yourself and getting your mind in the place where I know where my next opportunity within my customer base is to move them from that break fix to some type of recurring revenue model, whether it be a la carte, proactive, or better, right? The other sources of information we can look at are things like our support tickets. In fact, we would probably lean on this even in combination with that segmentation heat map I showed you, right? Like deciding which one of the a la carte models to talk to them about first, or two, depending on their needs, might come from an understanding of repeat tickets. For example, I keep seeing recurring issues, it's always a virus problem or what have you. Let's come in and take care of that with an a la carte line item. Or, you know what, George keeps calling me about the same thing over and over again. He needs training. Would you like me to provide that for him, or would you like to go get it somewhere else? I got to stop taking these calls. They're not they're not actually tech issue related, right? Assessments are a good way to find things to sell a customer, right? Whether it be a network assessment or in today's model, a risk assessment. All great ways on showing the customer that there are vulnerabilities, there are things that need to get better, and we can do it for a good price. Now, all of this stuff that I'm saying now and in the next few slides as well, guys, just to put it out there, in order to make the sale happen, you need to identify an ROI for the customer, right? Regardless of whether they're extremely price sensitive or mildly cost conscious and more worried about their network staying up and running like a fully managed guy. Either way, in order to make the spend happen to the SMB level, there needs to be an ROI that shows them that what you're going to do will save them in one way or another. It either save them directly in terms of money, or save them indirectly in terms of headache, but you need to show them an ROI to make all of these happen. And so these are ways that you can start having the conversation on this screen here. Your field engineers are a great method of upgrading. Like I said, when they ride out on their white horse and solve their problem, right? Your engineers are loved by your customers, generally speaking. And that's because these are helpful people who do good things for them, right? They solve their problems. And so there's a trust factor there. And so when the engineer goes out on site and solves a problem in a break-fix engagement, the first thing they should do before leaving is, hey, you know what, guys? It's fixed, but we probably could have prevented this. Why don't I get Sally to give you a call and talk to you about it? Okay, so leverage your engineers as well to help move them into at least the a la carte model, right? Solve that one problem for them in a recurring revenue model. Industry shifts can cause conversations as well in terms of moving away from break fix, right? Like in today's model, the traditional antivirus to next gen AV conversation is happening everywhere. There's no reason why you should be selling them product. Like, we need to get away from that. The problem with selling, well, there's lots of problems with selling product, but one of the big problems with selling product is when this type of thing happens, traditional AV to next gen AV, and I just sold them, whatever AVG or Nod 32 or Trend or whatever my favorite traditional AV solution is or was, and I convinced them that it's the cat's meow, and then 6 months later there's a shift in the industry, and really the better thing for me to do is to have them in the next gen AV solution. It's hard to change their minds. You just finished telling me this is the best thing in the world. Why would I switch it now after 6 months? And so we want to move away from selling products for that reason. The other reason, of course, is the margins on products are quite small nowadays, comparatively speaking. So instead, positioning more of a managed security solution or a managed antivirus or malware or whatever you want to call it solution, where I'm going to provide you with a solution, a piece of software. You don't need to worry about what it is. I'm going to take care of it. I'll tell you if you want to know, but ultimately this is my preferred solution. And if I want to change it in the middle of the month, I'm going to change it in the middle of the month because I think it's the best thing for you, but your price isn't going to change because the software cost is embedded into the service, right? And so that way we can make more revenue, more margin, and take control over what it is that we're leveraging from, a preferred software position. okay? And so that kind of thing needs to happen. Security needs are another way, to find extra line items. Like I mentioned before, that managed email security, there's statistics all over the internet that show phishing to be the #1 method for breaches to get into an SMB. It's ridiculous to not spend $3 a month on a managed email security, Mr. Customer, when it's 92% or whatever the number was. I can't remember right now, so don't quote me on that. Of all security breaches start with mail. Like, if you're going to spend anywhere, this is the smartest place to spend, right? That kind of thing. You can have those conversations and sell them that managed email security package for a monthly rate. Cloud migrations are methods of finding other solutions to sell them, new offerings that are coming out. And then, they might initiate things, right? Like, some of these things that I've listed here are really project. All of these things are really project work. However, in doing a project, 9 times out of 10, you realize there's things lacking. And that's when you have the opportunity to do a full network assessment, because they want you to do a project. They want you to upgrade their software. Well, in order to upgrade your software, Mr. Customer, I need to understand what hardware you have. Maybe not all of your desktops will handle the new specs, and so on. New specs, pardon me, and so on. So all of these methods are ways for us to find that next foot in the door and move that customer from break fix position to, at minimum, one a la carte line item. And that's really what we're looking for, is at least one piece of recurring revenue. Ultimately, obviously, we want to go full, proactive or managed wherever possible. But again, the customer characteristics we talked about before need to be aligned. Okay, so if those are our methods of lead generation to find people to talk to, what do we do when it's time to talk to them? Well, we move into our sales process. So if you remember the chalice, this is the gray box that I told you all sales are made and broken right here in this section. And this is really where, where all the magic happens, because this is where we shut up and listen as salespeople, or at least should be. If we're talking in this phase an awful lot, we're probably not selling, right? So the goal here is to learn, right? And so the goal of any sales process and any step in a sales process is to get to the next sales step, right? It's not to sell the end goal. You don't go trying to sell your service in phase 2 of the sales process, right? Your goal is to get to the next phase of the sales process. And so there's a few things you need to do to get that to happen. The first is, I need to qualify the customer. So I need to identify whether they're actually a good fit for one of my services, right? So it's one thing to know, that I believe they are. I need them to be convinced that they need this stuff. And in order to do that, I need to understand what their pains, needs, and frustrations are, truly, right? I need to ask them questions and listen to what they have to say, and show them that I'm interested in their business, in their day-to-day, and in those things. Otherwise, I won't gain any trust. And if I don't gain any trust, nothing else will happen. And then the other thing we need to do is then qualify us back to them. So it's one thing to know who they are. It's another thing to show them that we actually do have what we believe aligns to those problems in our portfolio already. Okay, and so this is really the step where that sorting happens. Okay, so how does it happen? So you start by taking a consultative approach. Okay, this is how the discovery occurs. You ask lots of questions, usually open-ended questions of the decision maker in this case. So usually the SMB business owners who we're talking to. Now, you're a business owner, an SMB business owner, they're an SMB business owner. Speak mano a mano. You're speaking in the same language. You both have the same frustrations. The same things keep you both up at night. Use that to your advantage in this conversation, and use it to gain the trust that you need to make this sale happen, right? So what are the issues they're having as it relates to IT? Any frustrations, any pain points? Why don't they like what's going on currently with either their current provider or their current situation, right? If they're in a break fix model, is it because they're getting frustrated with how long it takes to get resolution? If they're with another MSP, is it something that MSP isn't doing? What do they like about their current situation as well? Like, it's one thing to ask them what they don't like. It's the one thing we seem to always remember to ask. But asking them what they do like is also important, because you don't want that to go away when they become your customer, because then there's just one other thing they don't like about yours, right? So know both sides of the coin, and identify what their actual business goals are and how IT might be inhibiting them. Okay, this is the kind of conversation that is different than other IT professionals have. Most IT professionals have a technical conversation. What happens when you have a technical conversation with a non-technical buyer? Well, they kind of glaze over like a deer caught in the headlights, and they don't understand what you're saying. And when they don't understand what you're saying, they're not willing to spend money on it because they don't understand it, right? If they're confused, they're not going to take money out of their pocket to solve a problem they don't get, right? So speak in their terms is what I'm getting at here. Keep it at a business level, like you would as a business owner as well. And what do they need from you or their current provider they're not getting in order to get them to where they're going? Right? What do they expect from the service that they want to buy from you? Right? These are the kinds of questions that you need to identify. And when you ask these questions, you'll quickly understand which mentality they have, right? Like we talked about earlier. So let's recap this real quick, right? We need to align them. So are they, after having that conversation, do they understand their network to be mission critical? Are they therefore motivated by value? Then we need to continue on that sales process to sell them a proactive or a managed. I'm not going to go through the whole sales process today. It is in the Institute. There's lots of courses on it, from building the sales process to executing it. But at the end of the day, if we're going to go proactive or managed, you need to take them through all those other steps in that chalice in order to close that deal. If we've noticed they're a price sensitive customer and they're motivated by need, then we got to figure out what it is that made them take this meeting. What is the one thing that's keeping them up at night? Is it AV? Is it backup? Is it mail? Is it patch? What is it? And then position that a la carte line item and sell that to them on the spot, because you don't need to go through the whole sales process for proactive or managed to sell an a la carte line item. Identify the one thing that they're having issue with, show them that you have a solution for a good price that'll solve that problem, and then sell them that one thing. Okay, and keep in mind when you're talking to them, these are the I mean, I had a lot of characteristics before, but if I were to boil it down to one line for each of them, this is the one line for each of them. So if you're going to screenshot anything, guys, this is probably the thing you're going to want to screenshot here, right? So if they're not ready to invest in IT, whether their business is reliant on it or not, if their minds say that they're not, then you're not going to get past where they are right now, which is break, fix, and block. And so you have a choice to make. Do I maintain that relationship knowing that the light bulb's going to go off because their business really does need it? Is it worth my time, effort, or am I just spinning my wheels in the mud and maybe I should move on to somebody else, right? The next one is a la carte. So if you hear the message from them saying something like, I want to buy what I want to buy when I want to buy it, then they're looking at one a la carte line item, right? If their message is, I need my network up and running all the time, then a proactive program is what's in place here. And if they take it that step further and they're like, I want to be able to budget for IT, or in today's market, I need to be secure, then managed is the way to go, okay? So what are the next steps? Well, we talked about it quickly, right? It depends on what you discover. If it's an a la carte line item, then just sell it right now. Go straight to the close stage. Use this a la carte line item as a beachhead strategy into proactive and managed, like we talked about before, by growing them one line item at a time up and to the right of that maturity model that I showed you before, and get them to understand, how important IT is one inch at a time. Okay. It's not a bad thing. People say, why would I want to do a la carte when I can do proactive or managed? If you look at the margins, and I don't have a screenshot for this, pardon me, but if you look at the margins on a la carte, you're looking at 50, 60% margins typically on a very highly automatable solution. Okay, like for example, if you're using one of our platforms, say in Central, for example, you can deploy AV automatically upon rollout. You can automatically start monitoring it, automatically start updating it, and only get notified when it's not working properly, so that you're managing by exception rather than by rule. That keeps your HR costs very low and makes your margin healthy even in a low revenue model like a la carte. Okay, on the proactive side, if we realize that, you know what, they really are in the right mindset for proactive or managed, then we need to position the next steps of the sales process, in this case, the end user workflow analysis, right? And so what we did with the business owner in the first meeting, we now go do with all of the end users, or not all of them, but the select group of end users in each department or what have you, to understand not just the top down from a workflow perspective, but also the bottom up from a workflow perspective, because that will help us align our service and talk to them in a way that really lets us give them the ROI that they didn't even know existed, right? You have to schedule all your meetings for your next steps. The other thing you're going to do at the same time is that end user workflow assessment is actually a technical assessment, so you're going to probably bring an engineer with you to do that. You need to outline all that for the customer. Then you turn around and tell the customer, I'm going to use that information, what we talked about today, what I talk about with your employees, what I find on my technical assessment. I'm going to marry all that together. I'm going to come back to you with a support plan that makes sense for your business and your business only, right? And that's how we position a proactive or a managed. Again, lots of information on selling this stuff in the Institute for those of you who are already customers. If you are not a customer, we have some webinars recorded on where is it? I think it's SolarWindsMSP.com/MSP-Institute. So you'll find that on our main website. They're not training materials per se like the stuff in the Institute, but they're good information and a good step in the right direction for you. You might start to understand, how deep we go at SolarWinds and how much we really care about your success. And then I guess I just talked about that. So there is the Institute. It's a little screenshot of the course library on the right-hand side. The orange stuff are technical courses, the blue are business, courses sort of like the topics we're talking about today and way, way more. These are some of the business topics in there, like we want to talk about selling backup the easy way, or I have customers talking to other customers about, things they're good at and so on. Really great resource, guys. I've not had a bad conversation with a customer who's been through this. They've all said it's helped them, so hopefully it'll help you too. If you haven't got in there and you're a customer, please do so. Okay. Quick final thoughts, I guess, because we're about 15 minutes to the hour here, and then we'll see if there's any questions. Hopefully. The first thing I want to talk about is like converting break-fix customers to managed services can be difficult, okay, because of the mentalities and so on. But you guys can make them even more complicated because you overservice them. When you're a small MSP, 1-2-man shop, and you're doing a lot of break-fix work and you're trying to grow your business, too often I hear stories of you guys doing things for them and not charging them for them, right? Like, you're on the car and they give you a call and you help them solve their problem in 5 minutes. That never gets to your ticketing system. That never shows up on the bill. It ends up a freebie. When you do this, when you spoil your customers, upselling them out of break fix becomes a very difficult task. And I've actually had to work with some customers and consult with some customers who have done such a good job over servicing their customers in break fix that they could not sell an a la carte even or a proactive or managed program to their customers. And their move had to be finding new customers for a la carte, proactive, and managed instead. And over time, they got to a point where they were making enough recurring revenue by selling new customers that they were in a position to go back to their spoiled customers and say, okay, guys, you got to get into one of my packages or I can't help you anymore. Okay, so be wary of that. You guys are professionals. The work you do is worth something. Don't give it away. And if you do give it away, still put it on the bill and show them that you gave it away, okay? Because a lot of times they forget all the great stuff you did and remember, the mess up rather than, all the other great stuff you did over the last 5 years, right? So, be a professional about it. Charge them for everything you do. Your time is worth it, okay? The other thing you have to do, besides stop giving it away, is know who your audience is, which is what we went over today at a high level, actually in pretty detailed level, I'd say. I mean, those mentalities, those characteristics are almost always at each of the levels that I described today. So know that information, find the right prospects and align them to the right program. Don't try and force a square peg into a round hole, and then apply the right sales process to that particular opportunity. Okay, that would be my thoughts. So with that, I will switch screens and talk to you about all of our tools, show you a screen about all of our tools while I ask Chelsea if you guys have asked any questions.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions about your heat map spreadsheet that you were showing
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of in the middle of the presentation. And is that
Mhm.
available? And if so, where can they access that?
So it's available to customers, not prospects. So if you're a customer, it's in the Institute under the downloads page. There's a tab across the top, or you can just search for heat map in the course library by typing it in. We are not making it available to prospects at this time. So hopefully the person who asked is a customer.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, so I think that covers the questions we have now. If anybody has anything else, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can give you a few minutes back in your day.
All right. All right, then I will move along to the thank you screen here and give everybody another second, but it doesn't look, I don't see any now that I have the question panes open, anybody else asking. So I want to thank you guys all for your time. If this is something, this is the kind of information, that's going to help you, that you want to see more of in the question panel, please let Chelsea know. Say, this was awesome, do more of these, or whatever you want to comment, however you want to comment, so that we know to do more of them for you. Otherwise, I will say thank you for your time today and taking the time out of your day to listen to me, and I hope that you got a couple things out of this presentation.